Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
The Screaming Bridge of Hughes Road. Hughes Road is located in Liberty Township, Butler County, Ohio. It is reputed to have been the site of many terrible accidents and self-ends. Railroad tracks lie 25 feet below the bridge, and at least 36 people are said to have been reported dead on or around the Hughes Road Bridge. Ghostly figures, mists, and lights have been reported, as well as black hooded figures and a phantom train. The legend says that a car carrying a man and a woman stalled on top of the bridge. The man got out to get help while the girl stayed. When the man returned, the girl was hanging on the bridge above the tracks. The man then supposedly perished with unexplained causes. To this day, many people have reported hearing the ghost's conversations, then a woman's scream followed by a man's scream. A second story is that a woman was being chased down the road, and when she got to the bridge she did not know the area and thought that there was a river underneath, so she jumped over the bridge, and when she saw the train tracks screamed all the way down to her death. They say that to this day on certain nights you can still hear her screaming. Another popular and typical crybaby bridge story says that a woman once threw her baby off the bridge and hanged herself afterwards.
I live in Lebanon, Ohio. You want some spooky shit? Come here and camp Innawoods. Got a story for you, pretty short. I don't like to recall it since it shakes me to the core. Be me and 3 friends. Don't have enough money to stay at campground. Want to camp? Drive out on the outskirts of Lebanon, kind of toward Waynesville. Find a big patch of woods off Oregonia Road. Park car on street next to houses. Walk to woods. Set up camp. Just some sleeping bags since we didn't have a tent with us. Everything normal at first. Laughing, having a good time. Start to get tired, everybody laying down. Suddenly, see fire, multiple people carrying torches. Low chanting. Walking parallel to us. Friends all silent, staring with me. They turn and move away from us. Form this circle and start chatting louder. Some people start screaming loudly. We pack up slowly and quietly. Sudden whoosh. Giant fire with huge effigy burning. Looks like a giant straw man. At this point I'm panicking. Run as fast as I can. I still live here and enjoy nighttime drives from time to time. I live close to downtown, have lived here for 7 years, and grew up in Mason. I have more stories if needed. I've seen some insane shit. Lebanon is haunted as hell and filled with a lot of occult members.
Before my great-uncle passed away a couple years ago, he'd recall all sorts of weird tales and urban legends from Ohio since he grew up by Buckeye Lake. I'd hear a lot about well-known shit like Cry Baby Bridge, the Grassman and the Gore Orphanage, but every once in a while he'd tell me about one legend in particular that I could never find any information about online, and it's so fucking ludicrous you'd think more people would know about it. He was very adamant he heard this from friends back in high school, but I'm tempted to call bullshit and say he just made the whole thing up. At this point, I'm almost certain that is the case. Regardless, I'd love to know if anyone around Buckeye Lake or just Ohio in general has heard of this story or something like it, because I'd love not to be the only one who grew up hearing about a phantom punch buggy that hated sex. I'm probably gonna get a lot of shit mixed up, but the story, according to him, at least, goes that sometime in the late 1950s, a father and daughter moved into the town of Mount Vernon. The father was a devout Christian, while the daughter was a troubled teen due to the death of her mother at a young age. Needless to say, their relationship wasn't great, and they'd clash over shit like her clothing and taste in music. Things went from bad to worse when the father discovered that his daughter was dating a 20-something-year-old boy, and had banned her from coming into contact with the man again. That didn't fucking happen, and upon finding a pair of boxers hidden in her closet, the father attempted to confront the man at his home while his daughter was at school. However, while driving on his way to confront his daughter's boyfriend, his car, a bright blue Volkswagen Beetle, ran past a red light and collided with a truck. The father died to the surprise of nobody. A few weeks after his death, the car had been scrapped and locals had largely forgotten about the incident after hearing about it. During this time though, teenage couples around the area started to report they were being stalked by a vehicle remarkably similar to the one the father had driven, a bright blue Volkswagen Beetle. One couple claimed that the mysterious car had tried to run them over while getting intimate in the woods, which just seems like a bad idea, emo. Doing the nasty in the woods seems like a perfect way to catch any kind of disease. While another swore that they could see the Beetle parked outside their home as they were taking their clothes off, shining its headlights directly into the house's bedroom window. Some people even tried to link the legends to certain disappearances in the area, saying this phantom vehicle was responsible for several cases of missing teens. I'm not a professional storyteller by any means, but I tried my best to get the gist of this whole myth across.
Northeasterner here. Aside from the obvious, Helltown, YSU hauntings, cry baby bridges, etc., my family, friends, and I have experienced some weird shit in the woods here. The thing that stuck with me the most was something that happened to my mother. I'm about 16. We live in Northeast Ohio, live in Innawoods. Run a small farm inherited from one of Dad's relatives. One night Mom walks outside to grab a jacket she had forgotten. She goes to the edge of the property and grabs the jacket, starts walking back to the house. She hears something start howling in the woods from off in the distance. She walks faster. She's near the chicken pen about halfway to the house. The howling gets louder. She said it wasn't like a dog howling. It was simian. Like a monkey howling in a zoo. She freaks the fuck out. Said she knew she couldn't run to the house fast enough. She ducks and hides in the chicken coop. Hides out there for a half hour. Finally, I walk out and look for her because I'm worried. Call for her. No answer. Notice the chicken coop door isn't locked correctly, latches are only locked on one side. Go over and open it. Mom screams. What the fuck? PNG. She's crouched in a corner crying. She calms down when I shine the flashlight on my face. Lead her back inside. She finally calms down and tells me about the noise. At the time, I thought she was just being ridiculous. But I've researched it since then, and apparently there have been other reports of weird howling in our area that matches up with what my mother described.
I live on a few hundred-acre farm property in Northeast Ohio. Always some scary shit, loud-ass noises going on. Here's 2 stories I wouldn't mind sharing. B13. Sleeping. About 2:30 a.m. and hear some fucked up ass scratching noises on windows. No trees near enough to the house to scratch. Start to panic when I realize that. Hide under covers, scratching stops. Peek back up and for a second saw a big black ass shadow in the window. Shadow moves off and scratching begins once again. Bawling my fucking eyes out. Eventually fall asleep from exhaustion. Wake up, windows and gutters all scratched to hell. Nothing in Ohio is big enough to reach the gutters, so I didn't go outside for a few months. That's one. I'll post the other, which is a lot more recent, was just this year in April. Second story. A little bit of background. My fire pit is at the very edge of my yard where thick overgrowth runs for about 200 to 300 feet before going into tons of forest area. Now 20. Do a lot of hunting and stuff on property, so I'm a lot less scared of silly shit. Chilling in backyard with friend at a campfire. Friend is a pussy from suburbs, never had anything spooky happen to him. Coyotes start howling loud as fuck. Sounded about a quarter mile away. Okay, no different than any other night. Friend visibly shaken from silly coyotes. Coyotes stop howling for 10 to 15 seconds. All hell breaks loose. Coyotes yelping and screaming bloody murder. Friend is now hauling ass to the house. I'm confused cause WTF hurts a pack of coyotes like that, maybe another pack of coyotes? Coyotes stop screaming and yelping. Two very audibly loud roar screeches go off from around the same distance and were obviously two different entities. Friend in house waving me in and shit. Okay fine, I'll come in, we can play Battlefield for no big deal. One more roar screech blows off. Sounds just behind the tree line about 50 or so feet from where I was standing. Proceed to haul ass to the house. Get in, lock door. Never actually play video games. Sit and stare out windows all night. Not sure at all if the two are related, but both now got my jimmies rustled.
I've heard some ghastly ass roar screeches in Ohio before. Place called Gretchen's Lock. I think the park is called Beaver Creek or something. Near East Liverpool. Went there with some buds late at night. Heard lots of stories of ghosts there before. We were chilling on the lock, cool old 19th century stone structure adjacent to the creek. Supposedly the little girl, Gretchen, was buried there, smoking a bowl with my brothers, nothing out of the ordinary. Just waiting around for some ghostage. Been there over an hour and nothing. Pack it and head back to the car. Wait, I say we didn't drive all this way for nothing. Turn back towards the lock. Instantly the most shocking, blood-curdling howl Shrek. It keeps doing it over and over. It was like what a banshee or Bigfoot defending its territory would sound like. Kind of like a woman crying out and getting stabbed in the throat but continuing to trail off for 5 to 10 more seconds. We obviously noped the fuck out. Never heard anything like it. Definitely not anything that's supposed to be native to Ohio. Other spooky stuff happened to me there, but nowhere near as scary as the above incident.
Back in 2013, my best friend and I were on the verge of moving out and getting our own apartment for the very first time. Naturally, we were excited, but before we could seal the deal we'd have to road trip up to Maryland so I could receive the inheritance money my grandmother left me when she died. It wasn't a huge trust fund, something like $17,000, but it would be enough to get us started, and my friend had a pretty sizable chunk squirreled away at that point as well. The drive was going to be about 12 hours, but on the way there we thought we'd stop in Ohio for the night to visit Kings Island. My friend's family had season passes, and we figured it would be easier to break the trip up into 2 6-hour segments. Kings Island was awesome. We both love roller coasters, and we went on a Wednesday during the school year, so there was virtually no one in the park. The employees would usually just let us ride the coasters over and over as many times as we wanted. The concession stands, as always, were money traps, but we didn't even care because we were having so much fun. Later that afternoon, maybe around 3 or 4, we were starting to get slightly bored of all the rides, since we'd done all of them multiple times by now, and we were wandering around the park aimlessly, talking about the new apartment and my new girlfriend and other mundane shit. We were on the far side of the park, where there weren't really any rides or game booths, or even concession stands for that matter. We walked along the fence until we noticed a little path leading further out towards the western side of the park. Since we were so bored, we decided to take it and see where it ended up. It was a little concrete walkway that zigzagged between the fences on either side, and we eventually saw that it led to a small building. It was a little bigger than a normal-sized shack. It only had one window that we could see, and instead of a door, there was just a big opening that led inside. It was pitch black beyond that opening, and there was a faded Halloween-style sign leaning up against one corner of the building, along with some wisps of fake cobwebs dangling from the ceiling. This was the reason neither of us freaked out upon seeing the dismembered torso sticking halfway out of the entryway. Obviously the building was some sort of haunted house attraction, and since it was the middle of spring, it wasn't being used. We walked closer, wondering if there were any park employees around to stop us from going in and exploring this unused attraction. But I started to notice that, with every step we'd take, my gut began to feel more and more uneasy, like something about the situation was just off. At first I tried to chalk it up to us being in such a quiet, deserted area of the park, but soon it got too strong for me to keep up that lie. I glanced at my friend, and I could tell he was feeling the same sense of unease that I was. We stopped along the path maybe 30 feet from the building. I squinted at the torso decoration. From here it didn't look like a decoration, it looked as real as a movie prop, or as a real mutilated body. I have no idea if it was my imagination. It very well could have been, given how freaked out I was by this point, but I thought I could pick up a whiff of decay, that sickly sweet odor of rot that anyone who's ever stumbled over a putrefying carcass in the woods knows well. I glanced at my friend again, and he was looking at me and then back to the body as if trying to ask a question without speaking. I asked him, "Do you think it's real?" He was about to respond when we heard something shuffling around inside the shack, sounding way too big to be a mouse or raccoon or something. We took off, suddenly realizing with perfect clarity that there was absolutely no one around to help us if the situation did turn dangerous. We spent the rest of the day talking about what had happened, and decided not to call the cops or anything because of how fucking stupid we'd look if we got the police involved over a discarded Halloween decoration. A couple hours later we headed back to our motel, which was right down the road from the park. I woke up that night to a clattering sound at the door to our room. We'd gotten one of those cheap, shitty motels with the doors on the outside, so naturally it wasn't the most reputable place around. It was probably just some drunk person forgetting which room was theirs, but my mind immediately went to the weird shit that had gone down at the park earlier that day, and how close our motel was to it. I started wondering if whoever had been in that shack, if there really was someone, could have followed us back here to silence us. The rattling continued for another minute or so before it stopped, and whoever was outside moved on. I took the desk chair and jammed it against the door as a precaution, and the next day we got up, checked out, and made it the rest of the way to Maryland without any further incidents. We still talk about that day sometimes, and I took one thing away from it: trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. It's better to be paranoid and alive than brave and dead.
For 19 as well. I went to the Collingwood Arts Center the day after my birthday this past summer. The only spoopy thing that legit put me on high alert was the goddamn nun statue. I got a bad feeling around it, and as we were going down the hallway towards it, I saw a shadow move past the door. Then at the very end of the night, we ended up on the floor right above the nun statue, and as soon as I saw it on the stair landing I had that bad feeling again. We went past it and went down into what must have been part of the basement. Keep in mind this was August and it was hotter than hell in that building, but as soon as I got about halfway down the stairs into that part of the basement it got incredibly cold. The two guys I was with couldn't find a light switch and I refused to go any further. If it had been in a different area, I would have proceeded, but with that nun statue right behind us I felt too uncomfortable to go roaming around in the pitch black. For some reason, she unsettled the fuck out of me.
Joseph C. Dilks, also referred to as the Leatherwood God, was a messianic figure in the early settlement of the Ohio country in the United States. Very little is known about him, when and where was born, or what happened to him after his public apparition. He came out in August 1828, in a camp meeting near a chapel known as the Leatherwood Church in Salesville, Ohio. On Sunday afternoon, the United Brethren minister John Crum was preaching to a large congregation, when a voice shouted, "Salvation," followed by a strange sound, taken by all who heard it to be the snort of a horse. Everyone was taken by surprise and turned to see the stranger, dressed in a black broadcloth suit, frock coat, and white cravat and wearing a yellow beaver hat. He appeared to be between the ages of 45 and 50 and sported long black hair. The stranger was hosted by some members of that congregation, attended various religious meetings, and sometimes preached. Displaying knowledge of the Bible, he started to declare himself to be a celestial being, and finally claimed he was the Messiah who had come to establish a kingdom that would never end. His assertion of immortality had as proof that no one could harm him or touch a single hair of his head. Some families accepted his claims and became his followers, creating a controversy in the Ohio Valley. A mob that had decided to discredit him came to a religious service in the home of a Dilks follower and tore out a considerable lock of his hair to show his humanity. Dilks was carried before the local squire to be charged, but was released on the grounds that it was not a crime to be a god. Dilks took refuge in a farm belonging to one of his followers and declared that he was going to Philadelphia to establish a New Jerusalem. During the trip he disappeared and never any trace of him was heard again. A few of his believers, such as Michael Brill and Robert McCormick, died still believing in Dilks.
On the afternoon of Thursday, May 30, 1844, lightning reached down in all its intensity, struck and instantly killed the 4 Harner sisters in Lebanon, Ohio. The other 2 girls, Elizabeth and Sarah, were upstairs, tending to ironing and putting away clothes, the former being in the west room, and the latter in the east room. Jacob related to the reporter the events as he remembered them. He explained that as the unapparent ball of lightning struck, he suddenly lost consciousness. Mary, who was moving from room to room tending her chores, was found lying on the floor in the west room downstairs, on her face, significantly dead. Anne, in the east room, had fallen from the chair in which she had been sitting, and was found lying with her face to the door, also dead from the dreadful strike. The child Anne had been holding was violently thrown against the wall, it screaming in pain and fright. The mother was on her hands and knees on the floor, conscious, and trying to stand, was wholly unable to move. Sarah, who had been engaged in storing the clothes that her sister, Elizabeth, had previously been ironing, was found in the same condition in the east room, notably dead. Elizabeth, in the adjoining room, met the same fate as her 3 other sisters. An immense ball of fire seemed to fall from a dark overhanging cloud, and disappear down the great chimney. A loaded shotgun stood along the wall upstairs in the east room. The lightning strike had discharged the gun, leaving a black trail up the whitened wall. Neither tree nor any other tall buildings were on the premises so as to attract the lightning. Also, there was no trace of any iron or conductor from which the lightning followed. The storm was hardly noticeable in Lebanon, and did no damage elsewhere. It seems that fate had intervened and transformed a normal spring shower into a ball of fire that descended upon the Harner home and killed 4 sisters, all in different rooms, in an instant of time.
I got one. I'm a third-shift security guard at a factory. It's an easy job because there is only 2 other people in the whole building and we have an agreement to just fuck off the whole night. I spend most of my nights either playing a DS, on my laptop, or just watching movies. Well, one night it was getting close to when I like to go on my round when I happened to notice a white ghostly image in the lobby camera. After staring at it for about a minute trying to figure out what the hell it was, the thing just vanished. At this point I am like, WTF is going on here, and a little freaked out as I have to walk through the lobby on my round. The whole building has the lights turned off so it's dark as shit. Plus everyone knows security guards have a lower survival rate in horror movies. I'm about to shrug it off when the damn thing shows back up. It ends up disappearing and reappearing several times before I man up enough to go check it out. Turns out it was just a parking lot going out. When it was on, it would cause a reflection that looks scary as fuck on the scene, but was clearly just light when you was in the same room. I love the job, but the building likes to fuck with me. Know all those strange noises a house makes while it settles? Imagine what it's like going through a dark abandoned factory. There's a furnace in a hallway that likes to kick on while I'm walking past. Makes me jump every fucking time. Then there was this one time I was checking out a little building out back of the plant as part of my round. While I am inside, I hear someone jump the little chain link fence just outside. So I go out and check it out, but no one is in sight. I was half expecting to see a cat or something. Finding nothing, I return to my golf cart parked in front of the building and find the door to the little building wide the fuck open. That scene from all the Halloween movies was going through my head. You know, the one where the front door opens by itself and the character who is about to die goes and checks it out. After re-checking the building and not finding anyone, I fucked out of there. Never did find out what that was about, as I was sure that I closed that damn door on my way out.
This is the old sanitarium up the street from my house in Lakemore, Ohio, Summit County. It actually sits on a hill and kind of looms over the village below. Actually was Edwin Shaw Hospital for a while, but was an old TB treatment facility back in the day. The woods surrounding it became an unofficial graveyard where they would throw unclaimed bodies and place unnamed graves. My grandmother actually stayed in it when it was still open back on 2008, I believe. Only recently did they shut down. There was also a child treatment area, complete with little cottages and such. Eventually was turned into an orphanage and then I think back into a children's area. It's rough to get up there in the night, as the Springfield police have nothing better to do when they're not breaking up domestic disputes and run that place every hour on the hour. Been up there during the day, however, sneaking off the golf course path, and it's eerie as fuck. Pretty much dead silence. In fact, Lakemore is known around here as being a haunted village. At night near the witching hour, the streets fog up from the lake, and a huge heaviness fills the village. Gets hard to breath out there, and again it's dead silent. It was fucking creepy when my grandmother stayed at the hospital. Never have I ever seen a darkness just so black and void, even though the sky was lit up by the moon and the stars. Deafening silence, and the inside of the building still had the original moldings, frames and radiators, vents. The hallways were smaller, tighter and dark even with those blinding hospital lights. Too bad they don't open it back up and offer tours. Would love to go back. Now I just sit and look out my window at it.
13 years old. Sleeping in my room. Awake in the middle of the night for no reason. Breathe a little, wide awake. The door of the closet catches my eye for no reason. Realize there is a reason, it's slowly moving open. Holy fuck, flip the light on, like my ass is on fire. Creep over to the closet and gain the courage to open the door quickly. Nothing there, take a quick peek around inside, definitely nothing there. Brush it off, must be a stupid breeze or something. Say to myself, I'll solve this problem. Push large boombox in front of door, completely shutting it. Lay in bed, turn on TV for a while. Finally find the courage to turn the light off. Slowly, drifting off. Here, boom, door flies open, throwing the boombox a foot or two into the dresser. Door is wide open. Flip lights on and piss myself, grab blanket, slam the bedroom door shut. Hear the knob jiggle after I'm a foot away from the door. I sleep with my head on my parents' door, curled up in a blanket in the hallway. Just posted that in the note thread. It's a true story and happened to me in East Dayton, Ohio.
One more and then bed. Personal story. Parents' house, south of Dayton. B23. Just out of college, still at home. Working full time. Stayed up super late watching dumb shit online. 6 a.m., go to sleep. Sun's coming up. Hear a fork fall off my desk. No one/nothing in the room. Nope.jpg. Roll over and go to sleep. I have a dream that I'm fighting with my nephew. He puts his little clammy kid hand over my mouth and tells me not to speak. Hand is super warm and wet. Kinda gross, kid hand shit. Wake up, hand still over my mouth, not able to move. Hear voice, you fucked up. It's my turn now. Hand disappears, able to move. Leave the house, don't return for a couple of days. Bad shit happens with extended family while I'm gone.
In Lancaster there used to be an old supposedly haunted house, likely built in the mid to late 1800s, people called Mudhouse Mansion because it was on Mudhouse Road. Anyway, the place was said to have been the site of some self-ends and ghostly activity as a result of the deaths, but that can't be verified. And frankly, most people don't believe that anything scary really happened in the house. A true story about the place is that the current owner up until when it was finally demolished earlier this year was crazy. And for good reason, perhaps. It's been a popular site for local bored high school kids to drive out to at night and sneak into to try to conjure up the ghosts or whatever. But it had been in such a decrepit state, was probably really dangerous to even go inside, had been vandalized and targeted by arsonists, and was home to many homeless throughout the years. So the woman had her reasons to keep people away. Anyway, this woman is very crazy about keeping people off the property. She's hired a private guard to keep people off the property. I've never been on the property, but for my part I've driven by it very often, and I've noticed the same vehicle hanging around their property most of the time, occasionally patrolling up and down that section of Mudhouse Road, likely the guard. I've had other friends claim they've been followed by the supposed guard late at night when driving slowly by the house. There have even been stories of trespassers being scared off the property with warning shots. Not much of a paranormal place, but it's got its paranormal stories I'd be happy to share, however far-fetched they are. Pick related as the house. Here are the supposed origins of the hauntings. One story says that during the Civil War era a rich officer owned slaves and kept them in a shed on the property. He treated them terribly and eventually one slave escaped his shackles one night, entered the house and slaughtered the officer and his family. Another story holds that in the 1930s a new family moved in. Across the street there was a neighbor who noticed the mother of the house standing in the window during the day. The neighbor became a little perturbed when she noticed the woman never moved. The police were called and the entire family was discovered hanging in the top floor all dressed in white. Finally, the house was purported to be the original home of the Bloody Mary ghost while she was alive. None of these stories have any evidence to back them up, unless the evidence is sealed away in a town archive and just isn't released. A final bonus story is from a friend. He said one night he and some girl went into the house and were just exploring. He said he was drunk but the girl was sober. The basement of the house supposedly has chains hanging from the ceiling. They too were down there and my friend was antagonizing the ghosts, and he claimed to hear stomping from upstairs, then down the stairs to the basement, and then a rushing wind rattled the chains as he felt like an angry ghost was rushing at him. I personally think he's full of shit, but it's a creepy sounding story nonetheless. His proof that he wasn't lying was that the girl was sober and attested that everything was true. That's basically all I have for spooky Ohio sites I've personally seen.
My paranormal experiences. I suck at Greentext, so apologies in advance. B13. Sleeping in downstairs bedroom. He went peacefully, but a previous homeowner died in the bathroom. His wife dragged him to what was now my room to dress him. Always felt a presence in that room. Unexplained, bright green stain in the carpet. Almost like a small group of green threads instead of brown. Anyway. Always been a restless sleeper. Wake up at 3:33 a.m. My alarm clock/radio starts going haywire. Playing random country and static. I freak the fuck out. Try pressing all the buttons, nothing works. End up unplugging it. The dial isn't lit up anymore, but it's still going. Leave to get my dad. When we get back, it dies as soon as he steps into the room. Also, be me a few weeks ago. Driving through nearby rural community. Have FM transmitter in my car for my phone. All of a sudden it gets super statusy. Right as I drive by a church it switches stations. It's just some guy saying random words. No regular cadence to his voice. After a while it goes back to static and my phone starts playing music again. And one last one. Be in a woods last Wednesday. Area I'm in used to be Native American holy ground, Black Hand Gorge, if anyone knows the area in Ohio. Having fun photographing in the snow. Slide down a hill to get closer to the river. Setting up my tripod and camera. Suddenly look up for no reason. There's a large black figure watching me across the gorge. I mean, I'm 6 foot and this guy looked a head or two taller than me. Really bulky, like he was wearing a huge coat or furs. Look down to take a picture of him. When I look through the viewfinder, he's not there anymore.
I made another thread about river trolls, and an anon asked me about my uncle's story from when he was 12. My uncle grew up around the Ohio River. He spent a lot of time near Cave-in Rock. It's a large cave on the Ohio in Illinois. While he was hanging out in the cave one day after it had rained, he noticed how quiet the cave had gotten. Normally bugs will be in it and animals can be heard outside, but it was dead silent. He then noticed the worst smell, like burning garbage. Near the entrance he noticed a man at minimum 9 feet tall and loads of mass walk across the entrance. He had greenish skin and was covered in the algae that often grows in the creeks that feed in Ohio. Once the man left, so did the smell. No one in town is even close to 6'5", and he swears that this story is true. No one in the family has been able to convince him otherwise. He doesn't tend to joke about these kinds of things and never let me go near there at night. The Ohio River has been known to have goblins that stole girls, but those were always said to be much smaller in size.
In my town, there is a legend about a creature that lives in the woods. Some people call it the Hopkins Monster, others the Brunswick Sludge Walker. It is about 10 feet tall with red eyes and a screech that can only be described as demonic. I never believed in this sort of thing until I saw it for myself. My friends and I decided to look for it one night in the summer, so we traveled to the park that it supposedly lives in. It's not all that big, but it is surrounded with plenty of dense woods that are difficult to traverse in if you aren't on one of the paths that go through it. We decided that it would be best to split up, yeah, I know, maybe not the best idea, and each go down a different path trying to see if we could find anything. None of us saw anything out of the ordinary. We met up by a pavilion that remained perpetually lit to discuss our experiences. Since we found nothing, the conversation quickly devolved into us talking about how stupid this whole thing was. One of my friends started a sentence, then stopped halfway through, staring in the woods. All he said was run pretty quietly, so we did. I kind of assumed it was a cop or something, so I didn't question it. After we got out of the park, my friend was in hysterics and couldn't really say what he saw, only noting that it was something tall moving slowly towards us from the woods. I was not convinced of anything going on. That sounds like a tree shaking in the wind to me, which doesn't really get me shaking in my boots. My other friend and I eventually convinced the scared friend that it was a tree or something and that we should go back and investigate. We eventually calmed him down and he reluctantly agreed to go back in, so long as we didn't split up again. For the next hour or so, We wandered the paths in the woods over and over to no avail. We'd occasionally get spooked by some random sound in the woods, but it never amounted to anything. We started to head for the exit when we saw something in the wood line. It's hard to describe it other than like a stretched out man. Like, when you go into Photoshop and pull up on one of the corners of an image, if that makes sense. We kind of froze in fear, just staring at it as it lumbered around. Eventually it turned its head, and it had these orangish glowing eyes that seemed to instantly lock onto us. No one said a word, but we all knew to run to the other side of the park. There's another exit there that leads into a neighborhood, so we figured it would be a safe bet. After running for what felt like a minute, I looked back and saw the thing running at us. It looked so unnatural. It took short steps and kept its long lanky arms pointed down at all times. It was almost silent. We kept running, and I could hear it gaining on us. It had quick and heavy steps unlike anything I've ever heard in person. I thought we were done for. We passed the pavilion, and the running soon stopped behind us. As soon as the footsteps started to sound more distant, it started screaming like a fox and coyote at the same time. That was the most terrifying part about the whole ordeal, and I will never get that sound out of my head. When I looked back, I saw it slowly walking away into the tree line yet again. My best guess is that it's scared of light, so that's why it ran away when we got close to the pavilion. Going into this, we pretty much all but decided that this legend was likely perpetuated by someone with too much free time who lived near the park. Of course, it's pretty likely that this creature was some person scaring us for kicks, but it felt real to us.
One of the earliest Innawoods things that happened to me when I was about 6 years old, I'd say. Be visiting family in rural Ohio. On the outskirts of Cincinnati, nice little neighborhood. Immediately make friends with the other kids and we trade Pokemon cards, got my first shiny, a Mewtwo no less, and play vidya. Then one day everyone's parents were out doing stuff and my cousin who was 20-something at the time passed out. I later realized she was an opiate user. Big kid Chris and little kid Dustin. Both same age, just one's fat, come out with BB guns and Swiss Army knives and shit. We were burning plastic army men and cutting shit up, shooting mailboxes like little unsupervised hoodrats do. Decide it's a great idea to go into local woods about 200 yards away from a neighborhood separated by a field of tall grass. Girl, named Heather says, "No, my dad says to never go in the woods, no matter what. Majority rules, and you're woman anyways. Decision is made, we going Innawoods. So we make it out there. About 4 p.m. it will be dark in 2 hours give or take. We have to make it home before the adults do anyway, so we plan on getting back quick as fuck. Decked out with BB guns and a Swiss Army knife taped to a stick to make a spear. We think we're gonna use a spear to hunt something and bring it home to the adults for dinner because that's how 5 to 8-year-olds' minds work. We go down this nearly straight trail for a few minutes and hit a tree that has people's names in hearts and graffiti on it, with panties and bras and sneakers hanging from it. Also a makeshift shack close by. Dustin says, "That's where my brother says the older kids go to score." We don't know what that means, but okay. Keep going down the path, and reach a little pond. I see a rabbit or something and tell the other kids to look. Dustin, being a dumbass, throws his makeshift spear at it, and it lands on the bank on the other side of a little pond. Only like 30 feet in diameter. Fuck, we have to get that, it's my dad's knife. It's a bitch to get over there because the bank is muddy as fuck and we would have to climb through thick brush to go around. Dustin makes his way around the lake. He's kinda out of view while making it over there. Next thing you know, he just jumps down, grabs the spear and take off, losing a shoe in the mud screaming, "Run." We think he's fucking around because he liked to play pranks. So we play along and run back home. We see he has peed himself and are generally concerned. Dustin says there was a really tall, shadowy looking guy running through the woods really fucking fast. We all brush it off as someone jogging. I mean, it's Ohio, and it's common for people to go jogging on forest trails. Parents find out what happened and we all get in trouble for going out there. Heather's father, especially pissed, tells us to never go back out there. Nothing else really happens and I leave for home, but I return when I'm a bit older, which I will explain in next post. Fast forward to when I'm about 12. Back on Christmas break. Uncle is more of an alcoholic than usual. His daughter, the one that's only 4 years older than me, popped out a kid and is always making really awkward advances towards me when she's fucked up. I just laugh and brush it off and try to force myself away because I don't care who it is at that point. I wanna bang something. But that's a different story for another time. Meet up with the crew. One new kid on the block, Aaron. He's the oldest, he's 17 and his dad is ex-military. So it's me, 12, Dustin and Chris are both 13, Heather is 13 but just barely older than me. By a couple months, and Dustin's older brother Chad 15, and Aaron, which is friends with Chad, who is 17. They're badasses in our eyes because they steal their dad's lucky strikes and the occasional beer and do angsty teenage shenanigans to try and impress the local girls that sometimes come over. They're for 6 weeks this time, so plenty of time to get into shit. We passed the time smoking cigarettes, trying beer, and smoked weed the first time but didn't do anything though. Then about 2 weeks before I'm gonna leave, Chad and Aaron are like, let's go out to the spot, since they have 2 girls with them. The makeshift shack and panty-ridden tree spot to be exact. Get out there and start a fire. This place is only like 350 yards from the field, so not a far walk at all. 5 minutes at a steady pace, I guess. Drinking beer, smoking, etc. We decide to play spin the bottle. Chad spins and it hits Heather, then Chris says he has to pee. And since he's an insecure fat kid, he goes off into the woods. Aaron pulls out acoustic guitar and starts playing. I recognize the song as Yellow Ledbetter and start singing along, earning instant cool points for being the youngest. Aaron is like, hey, that's a good one, Anon, I didn't know you liked good music. We lose track of time and then Chad is like, hey, fatty has been gone for like 20 minutes. We get the balls to go look for Chris. Keep walking and get into the thick brush. He's sitting by the pond just staring at it. Hey dude, let's go. Our parents will be home from the Christmas party in like an hour. This about 8 p.m. and cold as fuck. Fog starting to roll in but not too serious. Just fucking sits there. Go up and shake him and notice he is fucking bleeding through his white t-shirt. We grab him and take him home as quick as we can. He's bruised the fuck up and just has this 1,000-yard stare off into space. Take him home and explain to his mom that a dog got loose from the other neighborhood and attacked us and got Chris. Aaron's like, no dude, it's the fucking Cheetah Wiley. Cheetah WHAAA? Explains how he overheard Heather's dad talking to his dad about some fucker called the Cheetah Wiley or something that lives in the woods around here. Some Native American spirit bullshit. We're all spooked by now. Decide to go home and sleep. Wake up next day and we're all hanging out playing Pokemon Sapphire, Ruby, trading Pokemons and shit when Chris's mom comes out all pissed. What the fuck happened to Chris last night? He won't fucking talk to me, just sitting there staring at shit. We really don't fucking know what happened, but we don't know how to explain that Chris wandered off and got mauled by some forest critter. Maybe he's just in shock from getting attacked by that dog. Maybe he should see a therapist, says Aaron. And she did exactly that and we really didn't see much of him anymore. They even moved away, he started getting violent with his mother, and was expelled from school too. His whole family kinda just got up and left. Normal shit from here on out, and then I visit one more time when I'm 17. Go back when I'm 17. End up banging my cousin, she was adopted, no wrongdoing here. Aaron is a druggie now. So is Chad. Heather is well on the same path along with Dustin, they just smoke a lot of pot. Go out to the spot like every night and party. Hear shit in the woods all night. Then I fucking see it. The tall dark figure just booking ass through the woods like 50 yards off. Like Kenyan on meth speed sprint. Doesn't look like it's actually hitting the ground, kind of just fluidly moving through and over shit as it runs. Tell friends and they all see it too. This fucker is tall, and stops to take a look at us and then vanishes behind a tree. We get the fuck out of Dodge and head home. We continue partying and I eventually leave and never return. Find out later through Facebook that Heather's dad got fucked up by whatever that thing was, and it stalked their house for months and he eventually shot himself. Aaron had a run-in with whatever it was but got away though. Nobody heard from Chris ever again. And Dustin and Chad moved off. To this day I wonder what the fuck that thing was. It wasn't a flesh trotter or skinwalker or dermis hopper, like every fucking person on X tells about. But yeah, that's my only Innawood story really. Sorry it's so long, I'm really high and tend to drag out my stories when I'm stoned. I hope you enjoyed it though.
Moved to this small town in Ohio. Really small, only like 2K population. Stay the night at Buddy's house. His whole family had lived there for like 3 or 4 generations. His dad is really proud to be from the town and loves to tell us some of the history of the place. Me and friends were both 16 at the time and were playing video games in his room. His dad walks up to us and says, "Video games?" When I was 16, me and my buddies were drinking in the woods and chasing girls. Then, he gets a weird look on his face. Asks us, "Did I ever tell you guys about the railroad tracks?" I look over at my buddy. He is as confused as I am. We both tell him no. He begins to tell us about these old railroad tracks outside of town, in the woods. Tell us the place had a history of people getting hit by the trains there. Proceeds to tell us about the time him and his friends went there when they were teens. Said that they all used to get drunk and go into the woods often. Wasn't a big deal for them, I guess. Me, a kid from the city, was very uneasy about being in the woods at night. Tell us they downed the tracks for a good hour. He said that the 3 of them all felt really on edge, like someone was following them. No one wanted to call it out at the time though, 'cause according to him, no one wanted to be that pussy. He tell us, at all of a sudden up ahead they notice a faint light. Tell us the tracks haven't been used in years, so it's not a train. The light starts to get a bit brighter and they notice that it is somewhat swaying back and forth. They realize it was a person holding a hand lamp. They immediately book it into the woods for fear it was the cops. They all make it home and he said that he told his dad about it the next day. His dad proceeds to tell him a story about how he was a kid, there was this guy who would roam the tracks. He wasn't sure if he was a vagrant or a wanderer or whatever. Apparently dude got drunk or something and a train ran him over. Flash forward to when me and friend were both 19. Drink very frequently now. Remember the story his dad told us. Decide, hey, let's bring some more people and some beers and check out those tracks. That next weekend, we get some people together who are all down for this night walk. All in all, there's 7 of us. My younger sister brought 2 of her friends. One was really cute and was honestly trying to hook up with her. Anyways, we grab 2 backpacks and load them up with cheap beer. I'm wearing one and my buddy has the other. We all set off to the tracks. Get to the woods following my friend. He knows the area really well and is acting as the guide for the night. The woods are really fucking dark and I hate them. Keep composure, oh, don't want to look like a pussy in front of that girl. The bush was really thick, we all keep getting stuck on tree branches and whatnot. After like a half hour, we finally hit the tracks. I'm fucking tired already. We start to walk down the tracks eastward. Buddy tells us that the tracks wrap around the town for a bit and if we head east we could just got back into the woods and still be somewhere local. Walk for a few, passing out beers to everyone. Actually having a pretty good time. Small talking to my sister's friend. I think she might actually like me. And then, we hit the bridge. We all kinda stop and notice this bridge coming up. It's pretty sizable, wooden. My buddy says, I've never seen this out here. Instantly call him out because he always proclaims he knows this area like the back of his hand. Approach the bridge. The tracks start to head into a small ravine with the ground coming up on both sides of us. Start to walk under the bridge. It's so fucking old. Look up and can see huge holes on the bridge. It's dilapidated and obviously hasn't been used in a while. We all stop under it and my buddy decides let's take a break and drink a few. I'm really uneasy at this point, but everyone else seems okay. We're all just hanging out, laughing, being loud as hell, mind you. That's when we hear it. A voice from the woods. Weirdly enough, it was a really clear voice, but I couldn't make out what it said, but it was a man's voice. Almost sounded like gibberish or someone talking really fast or backwards. I about shit my pants. Everyone freezes and gets down low. We all just sit there frozen looking around to see if we can see anyone approaching. It's dead silent. Not even the wind is blowing. We wait for a few more minutes, and then after not hearing anything we pack up and keep walking east. Everyone is visibly shaken up now. We all walk a bit away from the bridge. No one is talking. I can't shake the feeling that someone is following us. Can't stand the silence anymore. I ask the group out loud. So we all fucking heard that, right? It was a man's voice for sure. Did anyone hear what it said? My sister was the first to answer me. She thought it sounded like a different language. Everyone agrees that we heard something, but no one really wants to talk about it. We all decide that maybe we should leave. Buddy says that he isn't sure where we're at this point. He says if we keep walking this way, we should come up to the brick factory. We all trust him and followed away. It's been a good 15 or so minutes now since we left the bridge. At this point, the woods around here were kinda over the tracks, blocking out whatever moonlight there was. Keep hearing shit move and branches scratching in the surrounding woods. I just want to get off these fucking tracks. At this point, we're kinda in two groups, walking about 10 feet from each other. Leading the group is my one friend and with two of my other buddies. And the group behind him is me, my sis and her two friends. My sister's friend is actually walking really close to me. Probably could have put my arm around her. Didn't make the move though. We walk for a bit more. Then, suddenly, the group in front stops. We stop too. I walk up to my buddy and ask what's up. He points up ahead and says, "You see that light?" My gut instantly drops and tell him to fuck off, thinking that he was fucking with us. Look ahead and see it. A light. Very faint and kinda flickering. Looks like it might be a quarter mile or so up the tracks. But a light nonetheless. We all kinda just sit there looking at it. Frozen, not wanting to move, we watch it in complete silence. Notice, it is in fact getting brighter. It's moving closer to us. I fucking panic. Let's get the fuck out of here. I'm sure these woods lead to town, let's just go. My friend who has the biggest balls at this point says, no, we should keep walking and see what it is. The girls all instantly shriek with disapproval. They want to leave and so do I. Tell my buddy that the girls are scared and we should leave ASAP. He tell me to wait here with them and that the three of them will go check it out. I really had no choice. Wasn't going to go into the woods, not knowing where the fuck I was at. Okay man, hurry up though. They head off walking. Still super fucking dark. They quickly fade into the night, but I can't still hear their footsteps on the gravel. A good 5 minutes go by. Can no longer hear them. Still see the light. Still with the girls. They're all really close to me at this point. Try to make small talk to ease the mood. No one really wants to talk. It's so quiet at this point. It's almost deafening. Then, I hear really loud footsteps approaching us. It's my friends. They're fucking running at us. Full sprint. Absolutely fucking terrified. Buddy says, into the woods now. Without hesitation, we ran with him. At this point my adrenaline is fucking jacked. Can only focus on running and not falling. I barely remember going through the woods. I know we were pretty deep into the forest, but it felt like we only ran in the woods for a few minutes. We then ended on a back road outside of town. After we figured out where we were at and we all calmed down, I asked my buddy what the hell happened. He and my two other friends swear that when they got close enough to see it, it was a man holding a lantern. He was not all there though. Missing an arm and part of his torso. My one friend said he didn't even see any legs.
Loveland Frogmen. These amphibious anomalies have shocked and terrified both businessmen, farmers and police officers and remain one of the most intriguing cryptozoological mysterious in the United States. The story of these unique creatures begins in May of 1955, on a lonely stretch of road that runs along the Miami River in Claremont County, just on the outskirts of a small town known as Loveland, Ohio. At approximately 3:30 a.m., an unnamed businessman claimed to have witnessed three bipedal, quasi-reptilian entities congregating by the side of the road. The man pulled his car to the curb and observed these creatures for what he estimated to be about 3 minutes. During this time he noticed that these strange beings stood between 3 and 4 feet tall, were covered with leathery skin, and had webbed hands and feet. Their most distinguishing characteristic, however, was their distinctly frog-like heads, which the man claimed bore deep wrinkles where their hair should have been. Just as the man was about to steal away, one of the creatures suddenly held what the witness could only describe as a wand above its head. The anonymous source further claimed that sparks spewed out of the end of this device. He left post-haste. Thus begins the bizarre legend of the Loveland Frogmen. This tale would be fascinating enough if it ended there, but the two most significant encounters in this case, and indeed two of the most significant encounters in the annals of cryptozoology, were yet to come. At about 1 a.m., on March 3, 1972, nearly 17 years after the first report, a police officer, who understandably chose to remain anonymous, was traveling along Riverside Road heading towards Loveland when he saw something that would forever change his life. The officer claimed that he was driving slowly, due to the substantial amount of ice on the road, when he saw what looked like a dog by the curb. Suddenly, the animal darted in front of the cruiser, forcing the officer to slam on the brakes in order to avoid a potential collision with the creature. Once the police cruiser came to a halt, its headlights fell upon the prone animal. At this point the officer describes something that seems literally too bizarre to be true. In the span of seconds this crouched, frog-like creature, stood on 2 legs, stared back at the policeman, then scrambled over the guardrail and scurried down the embankment, finally disappearing into the Ohio River. The officer in question described the creature as being 3 to 4 feet tall and weighing in the area of 50 to 75 pounds. He also claimed that its skin had a leathery texture and that the animal's features resembled those of a frog or lizard. Another officer investigated the scene later that evening. He saw no sign of the creature, but reported that there were distinct scratch marks on the guardrail where the animal purportedly crossed. The second sighting occurred 2 weeks later while police officer Mark Matthews had an encounter of his own. According to the report, Officer Matthews, while driving into Loveland, spotted what he believed to be an injured animal lying on the pavement. Matthews climbed out of his cruiser with the intention of removing the carcass from the already ice-slicked road, when the creature abruptly lurched upwards into a crouched position. Taken aback by the frogman's reptilian visage, Matthews unholstered his revolver and took a shot at the creature, which then proceeded to hobble over to the side of the road and step over the guardrail, all the while keeping a watchful eye on the trigger-happy officer. Matthews' frogman matched the first officer's description down to the last detail, with the exception of a tail, which was absent in earlier reports. In the years which have followed these events, Officer Matthews has reneged somewhat on his tale. He now claims that the animal in question was nothing more than a large reptile which escaped from its owner. He further insists that the only reason he shot at the creature was to help confirm a fellow officer's story, a story which was, of course, being met with predictable skepticism by their superiors. Whether or not Matthew's change of heart was inspired by ridicule or the fading memory of an event from which he was 30 years removed, the fact remains that his own testimony counter-indicates his later retraction.
In my area we have the Ohio Grassman. Pretty standard Bigfoot-type creature. Went to Minerva to see if anyone knew anything about it since the original sighting was there. No luck with any locals really. A friend of mine knew a guy who said something about it. He told me to pretty much go looking for it at any lake or river area in Ohio. He claims him and his friend heard one when they were hunting one year. I like camping and decided to see if he was right. Not sure if it was the Grassman or not, but I set up a tent in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park and ran out in my car to stop at the gas station and grab some beer and some snacks. I came back and pulled into my area and sat in my car for a bit. I heard some really weird noises out in the woods. Like a person shrieking, but it just didn't sound human. I heard it a few more times and pretty spooked. I went into the woods and got some firewood and set up my camp, but nothing spooky happened out in the woods. A separate time in a different park around Nelson Ledges I found a really fucking weird structure made out of broken tree limbs. It wasn't any typical bushcraft structure, it was much more primitive, which supposedly is a Grassman trait. Other than that, Ohio has basically a swamp monster, but I haven't really looked into it. I might try to do an actual Grassman hunt, but I really need to get a new car before I do this.
Alright, you guys want spooky shit, time to tell you about what might as well be dairy from it. I've lived here all my life, and I'm surprised I don't see more about this area. If you don't know much about it, it's pretty much your average Ohio River Valley, lots of marsh, lots of woods, lots of us hillbillies, lots and lots of pot and meth. Well, there's something strange about this place, stories from other people in my area, as well as personal experiences. It makes me think there might be something wrong here, or that more people around here are tripping balls. For starters, as far as I know, we have one of the highest number of unsolved murder cases per capita in the United States. At least we used to, don't know if this changed. But people also just up and go missing out of nowhere. Lots of missing persons reports. Never know why, just know they do. And, we've got lizard people in the sewers. Or so they say. The closest anyone knows about it is in the late 90s they completely sealed up the sewer after police found a ripped apart homeless guy. But anytime I talk to any older cop about it, they sort of tense up and just don't talk about it. Older cop fellow I know, used to be a sheriff and is now my neighbor, finally told me more. Apparently some kids, about like 13-14 he said, had been fucking around in the sewers and found the guy ripped apart, looked like a bear mauling or he'd been thrown into a thresher. But he also said there was something strange about it. The guy's liver was torn out, his entire chest had been pretty much opened up, he looked like he'd been chewed on by something other than rats, and he said he distinctly saw what looked like some sort of white sticky paste by the guy's right knee. The town's only FBI agent, at the time, we've gotten 2 more in the last few years, got involved and told them all to try to keep quiet about it, and then the sewers started being bricked up. As for why lizard people? Well, my grandfather told me stories of when one of the bridges here was being built, the big spindly cable bridge. Some of the divers said they saw something looking at them when they passed by one of the sewer drains in the water. They said it looked like a lizard with a rounded face, forward-facing eyes, scaly skin kinda like a carp but with little spines on them, and a jutting snout. They said they are bubbles coming from 2 bulbous snorkels like nostrils. They never went by the area again, and he said one guy quit the job altogether. Makes me wonder if there's something underneath the town still, or if it died when they bricked it, or even if it left. Now, you've got people here who talk about the Grassman, and I'll tell you, I don't think we've got the Grassman, considering it's often described as aggressive. My own experience with something like Bigfoot was when I was about 12, in 5th grade. Out in McDermott. Me and my mom were visiting her friends. At the time I didn't understand she was just a stoner and was just hanging out and smoking pot with her old high school buddies. The house was in a dip in a valley, right beside a sloping hill, with a large garden plot that stopped when it reached a barn about 200 feet away. My mom had asked me to go get her purse from the car. It was about 9 outside and pitch black, so her friend, we'll call her Carrie for this, gave me a flashlight and I went down to go get her purse. I was trying to unlock the car when I heard it. What sounded like soft impacts on the ground. Sort of like a poof. I heard some leaves crackling, so I turned with my flashlight and walked right across the side of the barn. Not even looking or paying attention to me, was a massive hairy biped. Black fur, tall and long with thick pillar legs. It looked like the stereotypical Bigfoot. Except for one thing. It was tall enough to reach the top window of the barn with its head. It had to have been at least 14 to 15 feet high. I did smell anything out of the ordinary, something that smelled a lot like cucumbers and deer musk, but that was more later recollections that night. I booked it back into the house as fast as I could, started locking windows, doors, shutting curtains, and turning off the lights. I was terrified, more scared then than I had ever been before, never seen anything like it. Freaked the hell out of my mom and Carrie. I started sobbing and telling them what happened and they were just wide-eyed in shock. I'm not prone to make stuff up, I'm generally an honest person who doesn't like pulling one over on people or pranking. And they knew this wasn't a prank. Never went back there after that. Now, more than this, we don't see anything like aliens, or at least UFOs, but people often say when they go hunting they see lights in the woods that sort of just show up, float around for about 20 to 12 minutes, and just up and vanish. Could be swamp lights, but a lot of the forest isn't marsh, but thick loamy soil. Now, this doesn't sound like much, but I have no idea what could cause those. One of the most bizarre things I've ever heard was from one of my grandfather coon hunting buddies, a guy who I actually bought my blue tick pup off of. He said that in about September of '92, he was out hunting deer and saw something he'd never seen before. It was a white-tailed buck, all normal, an 8-point track. Then he saw its neck. He said that on the neck he swore that he saw a hat that looked like some sort of big pale white leech, about a foot long, hanging off it. He aimed up and looked at it through his scope, and he said he saw it wasn't a leech then, it like some sort of lizard, with white round scales that were like little bubbles all over, a fat round body and short thick tail, and with tiny little claws that kept it attached as it bit into the neck. The buck didn't act like anything was off, and just kept eating at the corn that he had put out for deer, turkey, and other animals. This was in his yard. I should mention, he prefers hunting kit of his yard. He took a shot, but missed and the deer bolted, with the lizard dropping off and running into the thorny underbrush. Never seen anything like it before, and he wished he'd had gotten the deer so he could have gotten the opportunity to catch it.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.